Hello, I'm Dennis. My wife and I both taught high school and college for years, and decided that we did not want to subject our children to public school. The values that permeate the school environment were not comfortable for us, nor were the contempt for study and scholarship that seems universal among public school students, and the emphasis upon compliance and conformity enforced by both students and staff. Our two have graduated from Excellence in Education, the definitive homeschool center here in Monrovia, California, but we continue to help other homeschoolers and homeschooling families. The College Prep English class at Excellence in Education. For over 10 years, our college preparatory English class has been offered at Excellence in Education, both in a traditional classroom and online, with class sessions broadcast and recorded for review. Now with full audio and video, online students may participate equally with classroom students. Learning language is one of the easiest things a child can do. It simply requires no effort. Our brains are designed for language, and at some stages more than others, we absorb like a sponge everything we hear, possibly hundreds of words a day, with no expenditure of effort. Unfortunately, so often we unwittingly squander this opportunity by not providing the words that the child's mind is so eager to absorb, that their ears and tongues are yearning to hear and use. Worse yet, so many children are trained to use very poor language through constant exposure to the worst possible examples, the English of public school. The study of grammar and style has its place, and is covered extensively in our text, reinforced with examples and repetition. But nobody has ever really mastered a language by learning grammar rules or memorizing vocabulary in the absence of exposure to good examples. We learn the language we hear, read, and use. Although complying with grammatical and stylistic language standards is essential in college, most commonly heard speech violates them consistently, as mangled idioms, colloquialisms, syntactic mismatches, dangling and misplaced modifiers, confused and inconsistent tenses, misused words, and unparalleled constructs pollute much non-academic and even academic informal English so thoroughly that reliable sources of language worthy of emulation can be very hard to find. How can today's student hope to sense or feel the right way to express an idea when perpetually subjected to a verbal inundation of ill-formed syntax? Certainly, there is little that can harm a student's language sense more than being subjected for hours every day to the language of public school. When listening to teachers in class or school meetings televised on community access channels, one is struck by the banality of the language, even when the grammar is not irredeemably awful. What hope does the student have whose ears have been so thoroughly steeped in communication contaminated with misusage and largely bereft of any spark of inspired expression? With nothing but flawed and feeble verbal examples, an eloquence vacuum exists that no rules and theory of writing, no discussion of motifs and metaphors, no vocabulary lists can possibly fill. It has often been asserted that everyone makes language mistakes when speaking. This is simply untrue. Though questionable and informal language may dominate most speech, even in the university, there do exist writers and orators whose speech is flawless and consistently brilliant. In our class, we study these and do our best to emulate them. The result is an environment which does not reinforce poor usage and has often enabled students to achieve remarkable language facility very rapidly. Students are expected to produce written works that comply with standard written English as defined by and tested for on exams such as the SAT, ACT, and TOEFL, the test of English as a foreign language. To most students, this is an entirely foreign language, one that they never hear spoken and only encounter occasionally on the printed page. Is it any wonder that they have so much trouble expressing themselves in writing? Writing can be an utterly jubilant activity, but a significant level of creative ecstasy is rarely encountered in high school age students, and is very nearly impossible to achieve in the traditional school environment. Experience in most high school classrooms, using the mass production educational model, and presided over by often well-meaning but uninspired pedants, so often prompts one to conclude that essay writing is always something decidedly distasteful. The essay, however, can be an eye-opening opportunity for endless creativity and variation, whose flexibility and expressive potential is limited only by the writer's ability to weave cogent content into a dazzling fabric of felicitous diction. Well, perhaps that's overdoing it a bit, but the point stands. Essay writing is what one makes of it, and the more one does, the better one gets, and the easier and more enjoyable it becomes. This is the philosophy that our college prep English class espouses and implements. It is very hard to generate enthusiasm for writing when one's labor results only in a piece of paper, an ephemeral entity whose sole purpose for existence is to be the subject of a cursory critical evaluation and a single mark in a grade book. Essay writing is often much more exciting and interesting when one is writing for an audience and not just for a teacher who will glance over the paper quickly, make a few red marks, and return it. Unfortunately, few alternatives to uninspired and anemic instructional mediocrity exist. In our college prep English class, everyone has the opportunity to write for an audience, for the class as a whole, the teacher, and ultimately, after some honing and revision, for a larger audience of fellow students and parents, for the public in web and print media, and for inclusion in individual student portfolios. A class grade in an accredited high school is certainly of some value, but it becomes somewhat feeble when placed next to a portfolio of published works, whose message and mastery are directly evident to the observer. Such a tangible record of student achievement is far more compelling than a simple letter on a piece of paper reflecting a perfunctory perusal and a possibly skewed evaluation by a teacher with hundreds of papers to grade. There is no reason for grammar and writing study to be dry and boring. Our college prep English class uses the one-room schoolhouse paradigm, with students of multiple ages and abilities working and studying together. The emphasis is upon auditory and written exposure to excellent language examples, use of formal academic English in speech and writing, writing and speaking for personal enjoyment, writing with a purpose and for an audience. For further information or to contact the instructor, please visit our class page.